Greetings, fellow men. Servus Männer, it's Red Pill Germany again. So you all have seen a lot of video footage and a lot of pictures from the protests in the US and all over the world, these anti-Trump protests. And I waited a little bit and I checked how the German media, for example, would report on that. And now I want to give you my impression. First of all, on how the German media portrayed it. Second of all, on the demonstrations. And then third of all, on the riots that we have seen. So my German perspective might be a little different than what you have heard so far. We have had our fair share of communist political violence in past decades. But now we see a new breed of terrorists or protesters and rioters, and these are the millennial social justice warriors, as opposed to the 1970s communist hippie movement. Okay, so first of all, what did the German media say? So, of course, the German media was portraying these protests a lot. There were a lot of front page articles with a lot of pictures about the protests in DC and all over the world. And they were covering a lot of the details. So I'm not going to quote any of the articles because it doesn't really make sense. I mean, they had people there and they just said what kind of signs people had, and that Madonna and Cher and all these celebrities were there, and a lot of virtue signaling, of course. So a lot of details, yeah, a lot of celebrity news, basically, yeah. But they did not say who was behind the protests. Yeah? One article spoke about Democrats abroad, that this is of course affiliated with the Democratic Party, but they did not talk about the head of this protest, Miss Sarsour, who has ties to Hamas, actually. And in this light, it doesn't surprise at all that this one sign shows a Muslim woman wrapped in a hijab that shows the American flag. Now, the German media, with all the terrorist attacks that we have in Europe at the moment, did not want to bother the readers and listeners with these pesky little details. Also, that abortion clinics, Jewish, Arab associations were behind all that. None of that could be read in the media that I read, at least in Germany. They just said that it is a broad movement against homophobia, against misogyny, against racism. So you could read pages of pages about superficial little details and absolutely unnecessary little facts, but what was behind all that? I mean, I showed in the last video, you just have to go to their website and you see all these partners and sponsors, and it basically just screams George Soros, right? But none of that can be read in German media. So this is why the mainstream media have become absolutely useless. It is not the information that you actually need, that you want. It is just superficial bullshit. Yeah, they cover all the details, like who was wearing what kind of slogans you had, but they don't cover who's behind it. Isn't that much more interesting? Isn't that much more enlightening and important for an informed citizen? So this is why I think that the German mainstream media will go down. All these people will be unemployed. These companies will go bankrupt, and the alternative media or the right-wing media will also thrive in Germany. And I'm gonna make another video about that in the future. Now, and what I will say about these riots and these protests. So I want to keep it a little bit separate, even though it is the same crowd. It is all this white loser middle class government payroll or recipients of transfer income people, and then you have, of course, left-winged SJW university students. But you know, it's not like the people who go to the Women's March would be very opposed to these rioters, right? And the rioters probably also have nothing against the people who go to the Women's March. I think that they're both in solidarity with each other, I would say. say just that it's not the style of these Women's March people to smash windows, but they probably applaud them. And I would also say that these Women's March people, these peaceful protesters, they weren't so peaceful after all. There were also people attacked there, and there were threats were being made, and yeah, there were some aggressive scenes there too. So what we see here is basically people who are used to getting free stuff, and they rightfully so, I might add. They are afraid now that the gravy train will come to an end, that their free abortions and their scholarships and their public sector jobs will go down, and that they actually would have to work. They would have to have productive jobs, not just some phony jobs, but actual productive jobs, and transferred income and social welfare spending, all that stuff would probably go down. And Trump wants to have more jobs in America. But the problem for these people is that when there are more jobs, then they're probably really expected to work, right? They don't want that. They don't want to work. They want to be taken care of. And they're really afraid now that this will not be possible to the full extent as it is now, when Donald Trump is realizing his plans. So I can understand that they're terrified and they're having a chimp out. They're throwing a tantrum, a temper tantrum like little children. So it doesn't surprise me that there was not a single coherent, logical argument to be heard from this crowd, but only simplistic slogans and screaming, basically. So then we have the next group, these Antifa communists. And people like Thunderfoot, for example, call them anarchists. And I have to strongly disagree here, because an anarchist, according to my book at least, is someone who rejects state power. They reject the government, basically. But these people, they don't reject state power. They would have been in favor of Hillary Clinton. They didn't do this stuff under Obama, and Obama was also a president. There was also state power there. They don't just reject state power. They want the person in power to be left-winged, and that makes them socialists or communists, but they're not anarchists. Yeah? They're socialists. And if you look at the Antifa that we have here in Europe, they're also not anarchists. Yeah? The Antifa is probably much older in Europe than it is in America. People just start to realize what Antifa is in America. It's my feeling, at least. We have these people with these red and black flags since the 70s, at least. So, and these people are actually very dangerous. They're so brainwashed with this communistic ideology that they think that they are actually in the right. That they think they are actually legitimized to use even deadly force in order to defeat or smash fascism, as they call it. Yeah. So everyone who disagrees with them is, of course, a fascist, and anything goes. You know, you can burn them alive. You can put a knife in people's throats. It doesn't matter, as long as you declare that that person was sure a fascist. And they are very desensitized to violence. They are really trying to outdo each other in how violent they are. Yeah, it becomes very dangerous. You see a lot of these people in Italy and in Germany also, for example. And I just want to add that conservative or right-wing people, they never do stuff like that. They're the most peaceful people you will ever see. So I don't know a single conservative person who would burn shops or set cars on fire or something like that. I just don't know these people. I never heard of that. And of course, Republicans did not do the same thing when Obama was elected twice in a row. That also clearly shows that there is a huge difference between the right and the left when it comes to violence. So what you have here is many different groups throwing temper tantrums. They're angry, they're disappointed, and they think that they have been cheated and that they're in danger. Yeah, they feel threatened, of course, totally irrationally, and sometimes a little rationally also, in the sense that their free income, their transfer income, is in jeopardy now. And if there is one thing a left-wing person is really scared of, it is an honest day of work. Yeah, that is something that left-wing people just can't do, and this is why it's almost like you wanna cut their arms off or something. They're so horribly afraid and terrified that they would actually have to work for their daily bread, basically, or to pay their rent. Yeah, they don't want that. They want you to pay. So, but what can society do about these people? Of course, you can say they basically act like children. We have to sit it out, you know. Don't give them any ammunition, you know. Don't because if you would use police force against them, they could say, "Oh, look, that's the oppressive fascist police state." Yeah. So just ignore them. Yeah. Dry the swamp in a different sense. Yeah. Abolish all the financial sources that they have, all their funding. So that means defund all these NGOs, decrease welfare spending, don't pay for single mothers, for example, all that nice stuff, and then just ignore them, and over the years the problem will sort itself out, because when people have to go to work, they do not become so nasty anymore, and they are less violent. People who go to work every day are much less violent than these unemployed leisure class people. They're really the leisure class of the modern times. In the past, the leisure class was actually the nobility, right? This is why many early scientists were rich noble people, because they had the time to think about nature and to observe nature. The great empiricists, for example, they were all members of the leisure class. They became philosophers and scientists, or early scientists, one could say, natural scholars or something like that. But in the 21st century, the actual leisure class is actually the poorest people, and they're being taken care of by their trusty fractional slaves, by the working people. Now, the other thing that you can do about it is actually apply the law. I'm not saying do something outside of the law or pass now really strict anti-riot legislation, just applying the laws that we actually have, but not look into the other direction, but have a lot of police force on the street and really stopping and punishing every crime that you see. So just apply in a very consequent manner with state power, with police force, apply and enforce the current law. And that will be also a way to deal with this aggression, with this temper tantrum that we see right now, and there might be resistance then. Some of the more ruthless and radical elements among these rioters will radicalize each other maybe even further in the face of adversity, and then they will maybe actually blow up entire buildings, or just go on a shooting spree, something like that, or do something that we had in Germany in the 70s. A communistic terrorist group called the RAF, and that was not the Royal Air Force, it was the Rote Armee Fraktion. It was a communistic terror cell that was also in league with Palestinians, with Hamas, and they were committing a series of murders and terrorist acts in the Federal Republic of Germany, Western Germany back then still. And something similar to this Red Army faction could actually develop out of these protesters now, if the second path is pursued and you actually try to enforce the law and maybe let them go to jail for rioting or for terrorism. So me as a German, of course I'm in favor of enforcing the law. I'm not a friend of just looking away and saying, oh, they're just children, they just want to play. Let's give them 1 year of rioting and then the situation will sort itself out. Maybe that would be wiser, but, me being a German, I just like to enforce the law. And when I see people breaking the law, I want them to suffer the consequences, of course. And I think Donald Trump will have a really hard time if he wants to just ignore the problem, because didn't he run on law and order, and didn't he promise the people not only jobs but also security and safety? So I could imagine that a lot of his voters who got attacked or beaten up because they have a Trump shirt or a Make America Great Again hat, they would not like to see that the people who beat them up just get a free pass on their violence because the government doesn't want to escalate the situation more. That is not really fair. I mean, if Trump supporters would beat up a left wing person, they would go to jail. So they can only expect that the law is valid, is enforced in both directions, that everyone is equal in front of the law. So I'm really curious about how this will play out if the government in the United States will pursue a combined approach or go one or the other route that I just described, or maybe do something completely differently. Who knows? But I'm sure that these absolutely brainwashed young people who actually feel entitled to committing violent acts, they will not just stop tomorrow. They have been indoctrinated in universities and schools to such a high degree that they really feel that it is their right to beat up people, that it is their right to set people's cars on fire, that it is their right or almost their duty to torture people just because they have a different political opinion. And these people will not just have an epiphany that violence is wrong and let's go to work and let's work together for a better future. No, no, no. They still think that they're morally superior, that they're fighting against the evil empire, basically. They're the rebels, basically. And they have to fight the dark side now. That's what they believe. But yeah, when I watch Star Wars, I have to say, I really root for the dark side, actually. I really root for the Empire. But I mean, people who know my channel for longer, it's not a surprise to you guys, I'm sure. I mean, you guys know I'm a dark German, right? So that's my 2 cents about the protests and the riots that we see at the moment. And yeah, may the dark side win. Servus, Kameraden.